Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Anne and today I'm giving you my January wrap-up. This will only be a short wrap-up because I only read 3 books in January, which is not a lot, especially not after the 18 books I read in December, but that's exactly why I only read 3 books in January. December was a lot of fun. If you've seen my previous video or the one before that, I'm not sure, I think the one before that, I talked about how in December I wanted to rush towards 100 books read at the end of the year, and in order to do that I had to read 18 books that month, and that was fun for a month. When January started I won't say I was in a reading slump, because I was excited to start new books and to start a new reading year, but reading wasn't exactly my priority. I had a couple of weeks off in January and you would think I would spend a lot of that time reading, but I didn't really. I spent a lot of time playing The Sims and City Skylines, working on my reading journal. I did a lot of that as well. And I did some reading, but not a lot. And it felt really good to just focus on something else for a little while. I was still reading, of course, because I love reading. It's my biggest hobby and it calms me down and it's my favorite thing in the world. But I also love doing other things. And it was a great time. I had a good time in January. And I also read 3 interesting books, one of which is already a new favorite, and that was the first read of the month. So let's just move straight on to that. I read Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. This was actually kind of a buddy read with my best friend, because at the start of January, or more like halfway through January, we had a fun weekend planned. We had a sleepover, we did some reading together, had a lot of food, and it was a great time. And at the start of our weekend together, we went to the bookstore together and we picked out a book we both really wanted to read, and we ended up with Legends and Lattes. I'd seen this around quite a lot on Instagram and I knew a little bit about it. I knew that it was originally self-published, but that it got so much attention that it was then picked up by a traditional publisher, which is exciting. It is published by Tor. And I knew it was a cozy fantasy set in a coffee shop. That was all I knew about it before going in, but that was enough for me because I love cozy stories and I kind of want to write my own now. I'm gonna sit like this because it feels weird to hold it in my left hand. This is a story of Viv, who is an orc and used to be an adventurer. She wants to hang up her sword for good and start her own coffee shop. She encountered coffee on one of her adventures in a dwarf town and she has been in love with it ever since, and she wants to spread the word of coffee basically. And this is a story of how she starts her own coffee shop and how she meets new friends to help her, how she also gets into some trouble, but it's mostly just like it says on the cover, low stakes, good company. That's basically what the story is about. It features a lot of food, a lot of descriptions of food and coffee. It is a story of friendship. There is some romance going on as well, but it's mostly just about the friendship and about people being there for each other, coming together to create something nice for other people. It's definitely a found family story as well, I think. The writing is wonderful. I just want to sink into this book, and I did, because I love this and I gave it 5 stars. There's also a recipe in the back for one of the baked goods that is mentioned in this book, and I baked it and it was really delicious. If I remember to, I'll put up a picture right here. They were basically cantuccini or biscotti, but they had a different name in the book, which you will find out if you read it. I'd highly recommend it if you're looking for a cozy story and if you're into fantasy, but want something that's a little less action-packed for a change. Next up, there's a book that's on the other side of the spectrum. This is a book that made me feel bad, but it wasn't a bad book. This was Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead by Emily Austen. This was a birthday gift from my boyfriend, and it was a bit of a strange gift at first. When I unwrapped this gift and I saw the title, I thought, why are you giving me this book? Because I am very afraid of death. I'm terrified of it. I don't want to be reminded of it if I can help it. So seeing this title was a bit strange. But then he told me about it and he said it was supposed to be a darkly funny book. It was supposed to contain a lot of humor and it was supposed to be a light-hearted but profound look inside the head of a woman who is struggling with a fear of death as well. So that actually sounded like a pretty thoughtful gift and like I would really enjoy this. I ended up giving it 3.5 stars, but I struggled with that rating for a while. I didn't know what I should rate this because this book wasn't what I expected at all. I'm going to read the back to you to illustrate my point. Gilda, a 20-something atheist, animal-loving lesbian, cannot stop ruminating about death. Desperate for relief from her panicky mind, she responds to a leaflet for free therapy at a local Catholic church and finds herself being greeted by Father Jeff, who assumes she's there for a job interview. Too embarrassed to correct him, Gilda is abruptly hired to replace the recently deceased receptionist, Grace. In between trying to memorize the lines to Catholic Mass and hiding the fact that she has a new girlfriend, Gilda strikes up an email correspondence with a kindly old friend of Grace's, who is trying to reach her through the church inbox. Unable to bring herself to break the bad news, Gilda begins impersonating Grace via email instead. But when the police discover suspicious circumstances surrounding Grace's death, Gilda may have to finally reveal the truth of her mortifying existence. Now, I don't know about you, but to me this sounds like it will be a bit of a tongue-in-cheek, darkly funny, yet profound book, just like I said I thought it would be. It doesn't seem like it will be a very heavy book, but to me this was very heavy. I read a couple of reviews on Goodreads that did think this was funny, just like it says on the cover. Funny, real and witty. I get the real, sometimes witty. I wouldn't say it was particularly funny. This is basically the story of a very depressed woman who is devolving further and further into that depression and doesn't really have anyone to support her. That sounds pretty dark, and to me it was that dark. It has good writing. I didn't think it was great, but it was good, and it is an interesting look inside this woman's head and inside the way she's thinking, into her fears, into her self-image, into her past, because you also get flashbacks to her childhood and to the way her parents, who sound like horrible people, treated her and her brother. It is a good book, but not what is advertised on the package at all. I was quite taken aback by this because, like I said, I'm afraid of death. I've struggled with depression in the past as well, so it was relatable, and that made it a confronting book. It made it a book that was quite hard to read. A lot of the times I had to read it in small bits and pieces, which was easy because this is a very fragmented narrative. There are short sections of sometimes only a couple of sentences, sometimes as long as a page and a half, but that's it, which I always find an interesting way to structure a book, and I really like that about it. But I have my troubles with this book. I do think it's very interesting psychologically speaking, and I thought it was very real. Gilda's struggles seem very real. I totally understood what she was going through. It was also a look into a hypochondriac mind as well, and some of these supposedly funny bits were quite funny. I did laugh out loud 1 or 2 times. The absurdity of her working for a Catholic church and the criminal investigation and everything. I get how that was supposed to add a light note, but to me it just made it more tragic. Gilda sees a co-worker at the church walk around with a box full of leaflets about homosexuality being a sin and about protecting your children from it, which didn't exactly make this a more inviting work environment for her or a more safe work environment. And then there's something at the end that really made me question whether this was even meant to be a funny book or that was just a marketing choice. I thought it was a good book. It was interesting. I would recommend it to people who like a deep dive into someone's mind, into the psychology behind depression and anxiety, but don't go into this thinking it will be funny if you have any history with depression or anxiety. The last book I finished in January was The Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan. This is the first book in the Percy Jackson and the Olympians series. I read this for the A Year in Eldia Choose Your Own Adventure reading challenge by G from Book Roast. The first prompt was to either go left or to go right. I went left, which was to start a new series, and I started this one. By the way, I read this one for the Buzzword Reading Challenge because the prompt for January was to read a book with life or death in the title. There's dead, that counts. So that fulfilled that one. But back to Percy Jackson. Percy Jackson is a really popular series, but I think I was a little bit too old when this came out. At least I think the first book came out when I was 12, but I'm not from an English-speaking country and I wasn't reading English by then, but this was definitely not translated into Dutch straight away. I only became aware of it over the past couple of years, but this, for a lot of people in the book community, this is one of the core book series in their journey as a reader. For me, it's not. This is the first time I've read it. This is a middle grade series. For those of you who don't know about Percy Jackson, Percy has had a troubled childhood so far. He's 12 years old and he has been kicked out of many schools, and at the start of this book, he's about to be kicked out of one again. He finds out that his father is actually a Greek god and that the Greek gods are real, and that throws him into a whole new world and a whole new adventure. He goes on a bit of a road trip with two of his new friends, and a lot happens along the way. It is very action-packed, it's very adventurous. I really like this. I really love the writing style. I was immediately hooked after the first chapter. It's a very fun way of introducing a new character. Percy is kind of looking back on things that happened, which is usually a style that I quite enjoy. I am clearly not the target demographic though, and I'm a bit bummed that I didn't read this when I was the target demographic, because I think I would have absolutely loved this. But now, as I'm older, as I'm nearing 30, this just doesn't really hit the same way that it would have if I would have been 12. I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars, and I am looking forward to reading the rest of the series, but I didn't adore it as much as most people who've read this during their childhood do. It's really very fun though, and if you're looking for a middle grade series and haven't read Percy Jackson, or if you're looking for books to recommend to someone who is 12 years old or something like that, then I highly recommend these. So those are the 3 books that I read in January. In a comment down below, please let me know if you've read any of these books. What was your favorite book that you read in January? Please like this video if you liked it and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more of me in the future. And have a wonderful day. Bye!